Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chapter 5. In Chapter 5, we're going to talk about time management. Um, Time management is simply making the best use of the time that you have to accomplish what you need to get done. And one of the things we always have to keep in mind is that time is finite. And what finite means is that you have a limited amount of time, right? You have a limited amount of time and a certain number of things that you have to get done. So we have to be able to time manage. Most law enforcement officers work 40 hours a week. And this time has to be managed to accomplish as much as possible within that 40 hours a week, right? Certainly, this is going to be more of an issue in high crime areas where there's just an endless amount of calls and things that police need to do, but they still are limited to those 40-hour weeks. So, how can we maximize our response and our potential in that limited amount of time? So successful time management requires planning and organizing, and this is long term. This isn't hour to hour. This isn't even day to day, right? It needs to be month to month, year to year, which a lot of organizations do plan year to year, especially from a budget perspective. Um, the thing about law enforcement is often filled with time-consuming circumstances that are not like tangible things. That you're not actually able to cross something off the list and say, "Oh, good, that's done or accomplished." So, for example, you will spend an inordinate amount of time as an officer listening to citizen complaints and literally just letting people vent, letting people complain, letting people expel negative emotions to calm down, right? You'll spend that's a huge part of the job, huge part of the job. But it doesn't necessarily knock anything off of that list of things you have to accomplish. And it's also not something that you can just be like, all right, well, dude, I'm tired of listening to you. I'm moving on. You can't. You have to listen to them, de-escalate the situation, as a method of keeping things copacetic. So there's a lot of things that interrupt, and officers often feel like there's just not enough, right? There's not enough time. Those who do, and here's the sort of ironic thing, that those who do time manage well. So some people are just naturally good time managers. I am naturally a good time manager. I don't need to use a system to organize myself. It's just sort of something that happens up here, and I'm lucky and I'm naturally organized. It's just something about me that it's my personality. Not everybody has that. In fact, many people don't have that, right? The problem with that is that when you do this, whether it's naturally well or you have a good system of time management and organization, is you tend to get stuff done. So the powers that be tend to give you more work, right? Which is kind of counterintuitive. It's like you're doing a really good job. We're not going to give you any more money, but we want to give you more work because we know it will get done. Whereas this person over here, very disorganized, very poor time management, we're certainly not giving them more work. It seems kind of backwards. It's almost like you're getting like punished for being successful at managing your time and being organized. But it is what tends to happen, that more work falls on those who deliver, right? And those who deliver are people who time manage well and organize well. So for some people who it doesn't come naturally, there are a couple of approaches and ways that we can utilize in order to better organize our time. And the first one is going to be called SMART goals, right? And you make goals, okay? And you go according, again, this is an acronym, and you go according to each letter. So something that is specific, something that is measurable, something that is attainable, something that is relevant, and something that you can track, right? You can say, okay, we're making progress, right? This will help people who have trouble with time management. Another approach is called the Tickle file system, which is a method of organization and time management that you create a set of files that are organized by year or by month, or by day, whatever is best. And it keeps a running list of what you need to get done, when you need it to get it done by, and you mark things off as you go, right? So you're keeping yourself organized, and it helps you to time manage. Prioritization is another really important issue. Law enforcement can be flooded with more calls than they can manage at once, especially in urban locations where there's a lot of crime, right? There's a limited number of officers and a huge amount of calls. So how do we figure out which to handle first or what to handle when? The medical field calls this triage, right? So we prioritize, and we look at all the calls that have come in and say, okay, this one is dire and it needs our attention now and it cannot wait. If we wait, it's going to be worse. So this is the one we start with. What's the next one that's really, it's still urgent, but it's not as urgent as this one, all the way down the line to, okay, this call, this lady complaining about her neighbor's cats like roaming in her yard. That's not an emergency, right? She's not going to die in the next hour if we don't get to her. So she can wait until last, right? So you prioritize, you triage. What can't wait? People need help and a response immediately. And then you prioritize on down the line all the way to this can be the last call of the day because it's really just not that important. It's somebody who, yes, requires our services, but no one's going to die. No one's going to get hurt. And this situation is not going to escalate, right? So that's prioritization. There's also something called Grisham's Law of Time Management. And this is very similar to the other ideas that the urgent drives out the important, right? So urgent things demand our attention. So things like phone calls, meetings, things that have to happen right now, right? Because of a schedule, right? Questions from your subordinates, knocking on your door and saying, hey, LT, I have a question. Can you blah, 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 right? Those are things that it's very difficult, that they eat up your time and they're immediate, but they're often not as important as this list of things that you have to get accomplished over here. So you have to learn to say, don't, if the phone call doesn't need to be taken, don't answer the phone right now. Somebody pops in the door and says like, hey, I have a question. Say, you know what? I'm really busy right now, but I'm free between 3 and 4. Come on back then. Right. So that's a way of time managing. But like I said, the underlying issue here to time management is organization. Okay, if you're not good at organization, you're going to have a hard time managing the incredible amount of tasks that come across your desk. So becoming organized is hugely important to managing your time. Okay, a time log is another option. Time logs will allow you to review the log sheet, take a time log of a whole week and say, okay, where am I spending most of my time? What's eating up my time? And then you're going to evaluate it and say like, okay, so I'm spending a lot of time doing X, Y, and Z. How much of X, Y, and Z really needs to be done right now? And it allows you to prioritize, which we already discussed. Once you also want to identify those time wasters, and when you have identified them, you want to eliminate them, right? So too much time chatting with colleagues. This happens in every office where people have things to do. Somebody stops by your cubicle, they start talking, 5 minutes turns into 30 minutes, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I have a ton of stuff to do. I'm just sitting here talking to somebody, right? So you want to try and, identify time wasters and minimize them, right? A good rule of thumb for your daily schedule would be 50% of your schedule should be spent on priority 1 goals. 40% should be spent on priority 2 goals, and only 10% of your schedule should be spent on those least important responsibilities, or we call them priority 3 goals. Another way to organize your time is just going to be A, B, C, D, E, right? And again, the letters all stand for something. So A is if something's acute or critical, it has to get done. You do it first. B would be your next step, something that's big or important. It must be done as soon as A is accomplished. C, can it wait? And if it can wait, it needs to wait. D, delegate. We talked about delegating in previous chapters where, no one person can do everything required of them in an agency. So you want to look at somebody who delivers, who will get the job done and get it done accurately, and say, hey, I need you to do this because I don't have the time. And E, eliminate. Is there anything in the list that it's really unnecessary, right? If it doesn't need to be on the list and you've got so many things that are necessary, get it off the list. So again, another option then after A, B, C, D, E is going to be SPACE, which is SPACE. Again, the letters all stand for something. The first S is going to be sort. Identify the amount of time each task is going to take. P, purge. Okay, assign tasks to others who can successfully achieve them. That's going to be your delegation. So you're not eating up your time on this. A, assign a time. Pick out a time in your day and say, okay, this has been looming over me for a really long time. I have to get this done. So from 2 to 4 today, I'm not taking calls. I'm not taking meetings. I'm just going to sit down and knock this out. Letter C, containerize. Start when you have your scheduled start work time and end when you end. Don't procrastinate. Don't chat with people. Don't take unnecessary trips to the vending machine just to kill time because you don't want to get started. E is equalize. So refine, maintain, and adapt the schedule as you need to. Wasted time is never a good thing. Never a good thing, right? There's all sorts of things that will waste your time. So let's first talk about external time wasters. First is going to be the phone. Right? We all feel like when our phones ring, we have to answer them immediately, but this can interrupt your process of work. Especially if you've got a good focus and a good momentum on a project or on something that you're doing, the call can wait. Let them leave a message. You can return it. right? Because calls can go on and you might, maybe you'll get something knocked out of the way right away, but then somebody wants to talk for like 20 minutes. You don't have 20 minutes, right? So phone calls, email and text are another. Every time this beeps, we feel the need to immediately find out what's going on, right? But what's going on could end up being, something that you read for 30 seconds, or it could be a message from, a family member, a friend, whatever, who's like, hey, can you get me this? Can you tell me this? Blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden that 30-minute or that 30 seconds turns into 20 minutes, right? You don't have to respond to emails the minute they come in. You don't have to respond to texts the second they come in. So try to keep the phone at bay. Drop-in visitors are another one, which is very common in the workplace. People just come in and say, hey, how you doing? Or like, hey, you got a minute? Chances are, you will, but not right now, right? So if they don't have a scheduled appointment with you, ask them to schedule an appointment with you so that you can get the things done that you need to get done and they're not getting pushed back by drop-in visitors. Meetings are another one. Meetings eat up a lot of time. And we've talked about this in the past. Having meetings just to have meetings or having meetings about meetings, it just really eats up a lot of time. People can't multitask during meetings. They have to sit, listen, pay attention, participate. So they can't have a meeting and be doing work at the same time. So try to minimize meetings, especially if they're unnecessary, or see if you can send somebody in your stead who can just come back to you and give you the quick and dirty on what was covered in the meeting. Socializing happens a lot. This happens a lot on phone calls, people in the office, random visitors, etc. It eats up a lot of time. Everybody has an office where there's like that one person that, they get in first thing in the morning and they just like make the rounds from cubicle to cubicle and they're talking and all of a sudden an hour and a half has gone by, right? And they haven't actually done any work. And every single person that they stop to talk to, well, their work is interrupted. So socializing is important in creating good office rapport, especially between colleagues and from supervisors to subordinates, but you want to keep it at a minimum. And finally, putting out fires. And what I mean by fires is there's always some sort of problem popping up, something that didn't work out, something that only you can fix, right? Deal with them as efficiently and quickly as you possibly can and get them out of the way. There's also internal time wasters, right? Procrastination is a big one. A lot of people are procrastinators. It's the biggest time waster. I am not a procrastinator. I am like, okay, this is causing me anxiety, stress, worry, whatever. Let's get it done and get it out of here. So it's, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I know for procrastinators, this is a really hard habit to break. So just a few cues or a few clues on how to do this. Do the most unpleasant task first. Don't put it off. Get it done, get it out of your way, then it's done. And all of a sudden you're like, ooh, the hard work is done for the day. Let's do the easy stuff, right? Set aside time for specific tasks. If there are small things that don't take a lot of time, knock them out first. That way you can cross them off the list. You feel productive. It gives you momentum. Also, difficulty delegating is another one that really time wastes internally. Some people just cannot delegate tasks. Some people are very like, I need to be in control. But none of us can do every single thing, and that's why we are a part of an organization. So you have to learn how to delegate. And you have to learn how to identify who you can delegate to successfully and who not so much successfully. Indecision is a big time waster, right? Indecision. Going back and forth, not being able to make a decisive decision. So learn to be decisive, right? Don't let a mistake keep you from making a decision. Mistakes are always made, right? I mean, it happens to everybody. We fix them, we move on, okay? But don't let it worry about like, but if I do this, this negative outcome could happen. Or if I do that, this other negative outcome could happen. Don't let inordinate amounts of time being eaten up to that indecisiveness. Lack of organization is a big internal time waster. Trying to figure out where stuff is, trying to figure out where you left off in a project, trying to figure out what needs doing. Organize yourself. It will make your life so much less stressful and it won't eat up time. And the reason for all of this is because productivity is the desired outcome, right? So the time that you spend accomplishing and achieving goals that you need to do within those hours, that's where you want to spend your energy, your time, your manpower, your resources. You don't want to spend it with all of these other things that just get in the way of achieving the organization's goals and mission.